First off, when you create a character, you will have the option to choose between normal and veteran difficulty. Veteran adds more challenge with a minor EXP boost and slightly increased drops, but this is completely optional. After watching this video, you will be prepared to get to level 100 easily, no matter which difficulty you decide to play on. When you start your journey in the Lower Crossing, there are some powerful green items in the houses located near the starting town that makes the first 5-ish to 10 levels really easy. Be sure to always grab one of these when you're starting a new character. This will give you a quick power boost. At level 2, you pick your first of 2 masteries, which is just a fancy term for classes, and I always say just go with a class fantasy that you enjoy, because all of the masteries in Grim Dawn can reach the end game, so just have fun with it. At level 10, you can choose your second mastery, and this is where the full potential of your class really starts. For example, I love dual wield style builds, so let's say I chose to go with a Nightblade as my first mastery, and at level 10, I chose a soldier for my second mastery. I would then become a Blade Master, specializing in physical and pierce damage and being super tanky. But let's say I chose Nightblade and instead of Soldier decided to go with a Necromancer as my second class. I would then become a Reaper and I could take advantage of some of their Aether and Vitality damage and use them for a good amount of lifesteal while attacking. The combinations you can put together can really kind of define the class fantasy that you're going for, and it's fun to just mess around with the different masteries and playstyles. So just have fun and kind of just pick whatever you feel like playing, because it'll all work. Now, while you run around doing quests, you generally want to explore every cave you come across. Caves are marked by this little golden eye looking symbol on your minimap, and sometimes these caves will have a devotion shrine that gives you 1 devotion skill point. You can think of these devotions as a kind of passive skill tree with on-hit skills that triggered new abilities. The constellations in the devotion tree are powerful breakpoints for your build, and going out of your way to get devotion shrines is definitely worth it. At this point in the game, going for health regen or any speed bonuses are very strong and scale really well. Use the search bar to search up keywords that relate to the build you are going for, and try to stick to 2 or less damage types. Going into any more than that will make it really difficult to properly scale with your skills and your gear. The objective here is to make your way to the outer constellations because they have significant stat boosts and powerful on-hit skills. For example, if you wanted to make a dual wield build that uses physical and pierce damage, the Unknown Soldier constellation would be something to work towards, because it gives you great stats with the damage type you want, and it comes with a skill that gives you a 100% chance to summon a clone on critical hit. You can see the affinity requirement at the bottom here is 15 purple and 8 yellow. This is actually the number you need in order to unlock this constellation. If you hover over the affinities to the left, it highlights that color so you can better plan your path towards the constellation you're going for. You have to complete a constellation to get bonus affinities in that color so you can eventually get to those more powerful outside constellations. It looks complicated, but it is pretty simple, I promise. Just look for stats like health, speed, damage, and resistances, and you're ballin'. Speaking of resistances, it is important to cap your resistances in Grim Dawn, just like any other ARPG game. The goal here is to get as much resistance as possible and try to have them all maxed out, or at least close to max, before going into the harder difficulties. Because keep in mind, when you go from normal to elite difficulty, your resistances, and all of the resistances, will be lowered by 25%, and another 25% when going from elite to ultimate difficulty. Armor rating is also a super important stat because it reduces the amount of physical damage that you take. You can think of this kind of as your physical damage resistance. This is just as important as all the other resistances, and it is extremely easy to get one shot by a large boss's melee attack, so be sure to stack on really high armor on gear, along with increases to your health pool to avoid getting deleted by just one attack. If you're struggling to find the perfect gear with your resistances and damage types, you can use Grim Dawn's crafting components, which drop from various chests, monsters. Eventually you can craft them, you can craft super powerful components, but these essentially provide bonuses for your character. One component can be added to one piece of gear, so I recommend always applying a component and don't really worry about wasting it or messing up a piece of gear, because eventually you will unlock an NPC that can either remove the component or delete the piece of gear to give you the component back. For example, let's say you're lacking health, you can apply a mutated scales component to your shoulders and this will increase your health. You can add corpse dust to your rings, this will give you health and resistances. Let's say you're lacking pierce and bleed resistance, you can add a silk swatch component to your gloves to give you pierce and bleed resistances, and so on. I'm sure you get the point. Components are very powerful, and I recommend that each piece of gear always has one at all times. Grim Dawn has a really cool reputation system in the form of factions. There are tons of factions throughout the world, and each one has its own quartermaster that sells faction-specific gear, and most importantly, augments. You can think of augments as like another form of crafting components that can be applied alongside components to your gear, giving you even more ways to maximize the stats you want or the stats you're missing on your gear. These augments will start unlocking when you become honored and eventually revered with the factions. And earning reputation is honestly as simple as just doing quests in that area or killing specific enemies that faction despises. And later on, you'll even unlock a bounty table, and this will give you a random generated quest, and when you complete it, it gives you reputation for that faction. Be sure to always check out these quartermasters whenever you're in a town. They look like a normal vendor, but the bag icon is a bright gold compared to that like dull brown bag icon that a normal vendor has. Now I want this guide to be short and simple, so that's basically it. We can quickly summarize some important takeaways. Number 1, always max out your resistances. Number 2, get increases to health wherever possible. Number 3, make sure your gear has high armor, high defensive ability, high offensive ability. Number 4, stick to 2 or less damage types. And number 5, always be applying components and eventually augments to make up for stats that your gear might be lacking. And that does it for this quick beginner's guide. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for sticking around with me to the end. I hope these tips will help you on your journey playing Grim Dawn. If these tips did help you, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And be sure to leave a comment if I missed anything or you have more tips that will help a new player getting into Grim Dizzle. So my name is Manareth. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.